Hi, welcome to Hey Parents, Let's Chat. I am Jess Hunt, and I am doing a series of videos um, focusing on those first 5 years of life, which are so critically important as we build foundations for these little human beings that we're raising. And so, for the purposes of this video, I really want to focus on that year where they turn 3, so 3 to 4. There is so much really crucial in just absolutely um, super important learning that happens when they are 3 years old. When you have 3 year olds, they can become super challenging because they are becoming so independent, which is a good thing, but then also a really frustrating thing. And so, when they become 3, again, they're becoming more independent, but they're also more capable of obeying rules. They're becoming more mature. If you've laid the groundwork when they were 2 with, setting some very simple limits and boundaries and having some very simple consequences to behaviors, you've laid that groundwork. Once they are 3, they are more capable of understanding consequences to certain behaviors and in the importance of following rules. They're also capable of understanding 2 to 3 step directions, and so you might give them plenty of opportunities to practice that. It's super important that we're always giving our kids opportunities to practice those skills that they should be developing. They're also more capable at 3. They're way more verbal. And they're way more expressive with what they're feeling. And so their emotions become super big. And they are more able to verbalize what they're feeling. And so you're able to have more conversations with them. And again, this is dependent on their level of readiness with their language development. Some kids, once they hit 3, are very verbal and chatty. Some kids are still figuring that language out and are going to get there by the time they're 3.5. And so anytime you have opportunities to sing with them on car rides or have conversations with them. After you read a book, you might ask them, what was your favorite character? What was your favorite part? So that throughout all of your daily normal life activities, you are engaging them in conversation so that they're developing their language. That's my dog, Nines. She's walking around wondering probably what's going on, and I apologize, but that's her tip-tapping around the house. So anytime that you have the opportunity to engage with them in conversations, you're going to want to be developing that language, and the better they will become at it during, 3 to 4 years of age. And being able to have conversations with them about their emotions becomes super important. It's also important for them to recognize that other people have emotions. It's not all about them. And so if they are at the playground and you might see that someone might have fallen over and is crying, you might say to them, oh my gosh, they must be really hurt. Maybe we should go make sure that they're okay. They're looking so sad. Remember when you hurt your arm and you felt sad? They're probably feeling sad too. Just simple conversations, encouraging empathy. And then, actually role modeling and going over and asking if that child is okay. Bringing your little one with you so that they can experience what that is like. And so you're teaching them through your role modeling, always. At this stage, even when they're 2, they're 3, or they're 4, they're always paying attention to what we are doing and how we are reacting and how we treat other people. In the grocery store, if we are being like super rude to somebody or cutting in line or not taking turns or just have very rude behavior, they're going to think that that behavior is okay, and then they're going to act in a rude way. So we want to be role modeling the behavior that we want to see in them. And so it's super important. You might think that they're not paying attention to some of your behavior, but they are. They're always paying attention and they're always learning from you and everything that's around them. Um, and I always liked to really pay attention to making sure that, like, I was always super honest, because kids will start to pick up on, oh, it's okay that mom lied, then I can lie too. And now when they're 3, they're not really understanding what a lie is. They're starting to develop their knowledge, and use of imagination. And so anytime you have the opportunity to distinguish between reality and imagination, that becomes super important. They're really not capable of lying, but they might be using their imagination. You might say to them, well, now, is that real or is that your imagination? So that they start to distinguish between the two. But using their imagination, and they might be, like dressing up and, like playing house, all of those things are super important for their brain development. And so anytime that they can engage in imaginary play, that is awesome. We always want to be meeting our kids' needs, physically, emotionally, and mentally. And so we always want to be thinking about how we can stimulate them, or frankly, if they're overstimulated. Sometimes kids will act out because there's just too much going on, and then they just might need a break. Excuse me. And so I always wanted to make sure that my kids had what they need in order to develop, and that they were engaged in their learning. And it doesn't even have to be anything that's like super structured, but they should start to learn how to follow directions. And you might even want them to go to a preschool where they're learning how to follow directions from a teacher. Preschool's great. It's so awesome for the kids to be learning from another adult, but they don't have to go to a preschool. As long as you're offering them opportunities where they might have, okay, here's some paint time. We're going to be painting. We're going to be finger painting. Or here's some Play-Doh that we're going to be playing with. Here are some of the rules. You may play with it. You may not eat it. It's for your hands, not your mouth. And if they are choosing not to follow those directions, then they can be removed from the activity, or take the activity away from them. That way they're learning consequences for their behavior. They're learning that there are boundaries and that there are limits, and it's important for them to follow directions. There's also rules that you might have in your house that it's important for them to follow. No hitting, no biting. And it's super important that you are very clear and consistent with whatever message you are choosing to send to your child. I always was super consistent with anything that infringed on somebody else's existence, like hitting, biting, kicking. I know that there's lots of people that will ignore that behavior, thinking ignoring is the good parenting strategy. And ignoring does work for certain situations. But if it is something that affects somebody else in a very negative way, that's unacceptable. And so I always made sure that my kids had time out or they were removed from the activity. And that was how I handled that. Ignoring is a strategy that can be useful if the behavior is attention-seeking behavior. And it's really hard, especially when you're like emotionally involved with an activity or like with whatever is going on, and you're not really sure what the motivation was. But if you can identify that a behavior is attention-seeking, then you want to ignore it. I know that there have been times when my kids might have been 3 or even older at 4, when they were using very loud vocalization, And again, that could be like a stage they're going through, but they were doing it to literally get my attention, like while I'm cooking dinner or something, and or on the phone. That's always a really good one. Um, that is behavior that I would ignore because it was clearly attention seeking. Um, and so you really have to sort of identify like what the purpose of the behavior is, and that's not always easy. But I would always make sure that if there was behavior that affected other people in a negative way, I was very consistent and very clear, and then that behavior stopped. And this is where when you want to think about consequences, you might have whatever system you might have in your house. You might have, a timeout spot. You might have timeout no matter where you are. You might not use timeouts. You just have to make sure that you are doing something to teach your child inappropriate versus appropriate behavior. They are old enough at 3 to understand good behavior versus bad behavior. Good behavior, this happens. Good equals good. Bad equals bad. Whatever that bad might be. I'm not going to condone like physical punishment. Okay, spanking is one of those things that some people believe in and some people don't. In our house, I found it very difficult to say to my kids, don't hit, and then turn around and hit them. That to me was an inconsistent message, so we chose not to spank. But there are families that do, and I think that there are families that will do it with a quick swat on the butt. I think that when you get into what's considered abusive, that's where I'm drawing the line, and I'm just going to share my personal opinion. I'm not condoning any sort of abusive spanking, but I do like parents to have their own. Every family is different. Every family is going to discipline and parent differently, and I do believe in a parent's right to raise their kids in their own way, as long as they are not being abusive, physically, emotionally, mentally. And we all know what that means. So between the ages of 3 and 4, behavior management becomes so super, super important. We've laid the groundwork when they were 2, but in the year 3 to 4 is when it really, you have to make sure that you are consistent and clear with your expectations, because once they get to 4 and 5, if you have not set really good behavior management techniques in your home, you are then going to be making more stress for yourself in the future. And that can look many different ways. There could be just natural consequences that kids will learn. You know what? Kids are going to learn that if you are going to constantly take toys away from your friend, they're not going to want to play with you. That could be the natural consequence that teaches them. It's really good to share. And so another thing is just with natural consequences, I'm just going to share a story with you. When my daughter was 3, she insisted that she was going to go outside in the snow without her snow pants on and snow jacket. She wasn't even going to wear boots. She was just going to go play in the snow. And I was like, oh, this will be fun. I'm not going to fight this battle. Go ahead, honey. Go. Play in the snow. Go ahead. I'm telling you, you should put your snow pants and your snow boots on. But if you don't want to listen, go ahead. I wasn't going to fight that battle because I knew she wouldn't last. So my son and I had our snow pants and snow boots on. We went outside. My daughter didn't. And we stayed out and played. And she lasted 3 minutes. And then she wanted to go inside to go get her snow stuff on. And I said, well, next time I hope you listen to mommy. And that's how I handled it. So there's all kinds of ways that you can handle consequences. And sometimes the natural consequences are the best ones for kids to learn from. But always take those moments to be teachable moments where you then might say, oh, next time I hope you listen to me. So teachable moments are always ones that we want to take the opportunity to take advantage of, right? Um, so this is also a really crucial year for kids to really start managing those big emotions. Like we, the 2, 3, 4, they're definitely going to have tantrums. This is that age where they are learning how to control themselves. And sometimes they're going to be good at it, and sometimes they're not. Sometimes they're going to understand it, and sometimes they're not. Um, and it's super important that we are constantly just communicating with them. Where they might have been throwing a tantrum about something, but then they had a snack and it calmed them down. And you might say to them, wow, it really seemed like maybe you were more upset because you were hungry. They were probably just hangry and didn't know about it. And so always be having conversations and really help them to manage those emotions. Um, you know, the self regulation and the self control piece really can be very impactful between ages 3 and 4, where you just want to be setting the groundwork. So here's where we're setting the groundwork for once they're actually 4. And then they're way more mature to actually implement, self control and self regulation. But at 3, what we're doing is we're kind of introducing and we're kind of training them on how to do it. So we're teaching them how to do it. So by the time they get to be 4, they are more capable of it in a very mature way. And so again, we're laying the groundwork with really good um, behavior management. How do we manage those big emotions? Self control, self regulation, so that that's going to help them in the future. And again, you want to be making sure that at this age that they are becoming way more self-sufficient. Be careful that you're not doing too much for a 3-year-old. They're capable of way more than we think that they are. And so be encouraging them, giving them opportunities to dress themselves. They're brushing their own teeth, and they're doing so much more on their own. I also want to make sure that you are encouraging them as often as possible. Get out in public, go to the grocery store, be role modeling for them all of those values and all of those life skills that we want them to have. And so you're constantly being a good role model. You're giving them many opportunities, getting them out in public. When they misbehave out in public, and I have had videos on this, making sure that you are handling it. Don't be embarrassed. If you have to leave the grocery store and leave your full cart of groceries in there because your 3-year-old is having a fit because they couldn't have something. And again, there's a video that you can watch on that, taking your kids out in public. But don't let that stop you from actually getting out and doing it. They need to learn inappropriate versus appropriate behavior even out in public. So get them out there, practice that behavior management. It's also super important that you're setting up many social opportunities. And when I say many, I'm talking like at least once or twice a week. Where they're actually learning how to play and interact with other kids. They're becoming more confident at the playground. They're learning how to take turns and actually practicing it and engaging with other kids, asking kids to play with them. Can I play with you? Would you play with me? What's your name? Hi, I'm Tom. All of those social interactions, they have to be practicing. By practicing, they're going to become more confident and more comfortable. And by the time they get to school, they are going to be so ready to go. So you also at 3 and 4, as between ages 3 to 4, you want to be practicing with that self-sufficiency. So they are practicing unwrapping some of their snacks themselves, or, drinking using good manners. And um, maybe going with a backpack on, and they're packing their backpack themselves. They're zipping it up, showing them how to zip. So they're practicing all of those life skills. And again, you're introducing some of those skills so that by the time they're 4, they're way more self sufficient and ready for school. So I hope that these tips have been helpful. And I hope that you have fun. It is a challenging time, but it's completely capable if it's completely going to be a good positive experience if you are consistent and clear with your expectations, and understand that lots of this is just normal developmental phases that they go through. And so I hope you found this helpful. If you have, go ahead and hit subscribe, like, share, follow, all of those things. Add your comments, because I firmly believe that the more we share, the more we learn, and the better parents we become. You can also do all of those things at heyparentsletschat.com, and I appreciate you joining us.